Hi, I'm Michael Popa, Executive Director of Mainstream Coalition, and welcome to KSLeg Quick Take Wrap Up, an inside look into what happened this legislative session. Today, we'll hear from Kansas State Senator David Haley, District 4. Senator Haley, give us your quick take.
Thank you again for allowing me to be a part of the quick take for the Kansas Legislature, specifically for the Kansas Senate. I appreciate what mainstream has been and continues to mean, and the outreach that it gives and the encouragement it gives to so many of our membership in such a unique and progressive way. I'm honored to be here with you today. The quick take from my perspective of what we saw during this legislature is a mixed bag. As you know, we're in the distinct minority, but during these times of staving off, I think, the incursion of anti-public health rhetoric, we were able, in conjunction with the governor's office, to see meaningful legislation implemented in response to the coronavirus as to how we might once again be able to open up our society in a safer and healthy way. The balance that was struck between the CARES Act, the difficulty that we have overcome in connecting people to their rights like unemployment insurance and other economic matters such as the opening and the closure of small businesses and our public institutions like our schools, I think made Kansas or put Kansas at the forefront of responsibly responding to this pandemic. And that is the overarching theme. There are some others as well, but that's what's going to stand out for the 2021 session in terms of what was and was not done. I think in terms of some other wins that we did see or we have seen was trying to rein in as closely as possible what the tax implications would be. We did not win what I had hoped to see, which is called the golden years homestead exemption, which so many of us continue and will continue to fight for, which would allow people who have been in their homes for a certain amount of time to not be impacted by spikes in taxation. We were able to stave off some of the election and voter regressive so-called reforms that ultra conservatives want into place. We believe an open and accessible forum for people's votes to be recorded, heard, and counted underscores the believability of our system as a whole, not just in Kansas, but nationally. And we were able to maintain with Governor Kelly at the helm to ensure that we still are providing Kansans transition for having their voices heard through their elected representation. Another win that I was particularly happy for was to have, as the ranking member of the judiciary, though I did not see or we did not see some of the reforms that I would have liked to have seen put in place for responsible law enforcement. The only one we actually did pass, based on the backdrop of some concerns we had, was fleeing and eluding police, especially if one is doing so while impaired, which the legislature felt compelled to address. Beyond that, we have not spoken to some of the issues that one would think that mainstream and I know the Interfaith Alliance and other advocates would like to see in reform, law enforcement reform. We don't have the continuity of body cameras, for example, for law enforcement. We have not yet banned chokeholds or no-knock warrants in the Kansas legislature, despite the national outcry and the awareness that they have produced. Kansas still has to look at meaningful ways to retrofit our revenues to our law enforcement department so it's more applicable. So it's not a one size fits all. When you call 911 and there's someone who's having a mental health crisis who might be in their home even, that the response is not necessarily overly aggressive because it is one size fits all, and that's all we know. These are some of the concerns that we are hoping to still see yet addressed. We did get, in terms of child welfare, what's called Adrian's Law through, that law enforcement must see the actual child or the subject who is a victim of an allegation of abuse, and not to take the word of who could very well be the potential abuser before actually saying everything's okay. You remember the sad case of Adrian, who went from Missouri to Kansas and who ultimately ended up being fed to the pigs to hide his parents' crime in his murder, in the terrible murder. I was happy to see the Alvin Sykes DNA cold case uh, bill passed, which Alvin Sykes, the late human rights advocate from our area, advocated for. We got that through. So we'll be able to apply DNA technology for cold cases that have lain dormant. And Kansas will be at the forefront of putting that task force in place, as we are with other criminal justice reform measures. I think that what we're looking at more than anything else is, as we approach 2022, is how the very respective lines are drawn through redistricting. As you know, we had an interesting census year during the pandemic, but taking those numbers as we go into the 2022 session, when we will be drawing the House and the Senate and the congressional districts, especially, we should, as advocates, be trying to make sure that we have districts that are reflective of the constituencies that they serve, especially in key counties, the larger counties, like Johnson, Wyandotte, Sedgwick, the larger counties in the state where populations are remaining consistent or growing. That is going to be the watchword. We'll hear that a lot, redistricting, and how in fact those lines are drawn. An ultra-conservative majority in both the Senate and the House will probably try and put forward maps during this election year, these statewide elections that are being held, to try and play to their so-called base, who will have other reform issues, so-called reform issues, and the issues of reproductive health for women, which will be on the ballot in 2022, against our every best effort to keep that choice a woman's that is independent of government intrusion. And so that's going to be the big thing to watch out for. We're a regressive legislature, even on the symbolic things, such as a license tag, where they line up good things or groups that can have very good representation. If they want to display a Kansas tag, we end up the regressive one that speaks to a history of a slave catcher named Gadsden with the "Don't Tread on Me" flag. What Kansan, who's fully knowledgeable, what free and open Kansan would truly want to drive around with that kind of a license tag on his or her vehicle, on their vehicle? So I'm putting a lot of things in because I'm so grateful for this time that we have, and I recognize the time, but we have a lot to watch out for. The gains we have made in terms of having a balance of representation and the good legislators that are trying to do that are often being offset by some of our less inclined, still supportive of a yesteryear colleagues. And we need your help to remain vigilant, especially during this upcoming election year in 2022. Can be reached during the interim at senhaley@aol.com, senhaley@aol.com. I understand that's that old school, and oftentimes somebody is sending it to another server. It's aol.com. And also call me at my home office, 913-321-3210. It will ring to my cell, or always through the legislature, david.haley@senate.ks.gov, which we monitor periodically during the interim session.
Thank you, Senator Haley, and thanks to everyone for watching. If you'd like to get more involved in Kansas politics, please visit mainstreamcoalition.org. And please remember to follow us on social to make sure you catch our next Quick Take. Thanks for supporting Mainstream's work and for your commitment to do more than vote.